Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. Dill. Tennessee heading into 2025. I feel like many in the national media have just casted this team aside going into the 2025 year. And look, the Tennessee fans who've been rocking with the boys going back to the winter, spring months before the Nico situation even played out know that I had some question marks about Tennessee rolling into 2025, but to completely count this football team out is a foolish move. Number one, and I think most importantly, Josh Heupel is your head football coach. How many coaches in the SEC do you trust more going into 2025 than Josh Heupel? Like the only one I'm for sure saying right now is Kirby Smart. Like Kalen DeBoer's got a little ways to Coach Sark probably too. Kirby Smart, Coach Sark at Texas, but Dill, I guess what I'm trying to say here is that to count out a Josh Heupel coach team who has shown us that he knows how to win in the SEC, I think it's a foolish move. And even if you do have question marks at the quarterback position, give Josh Heupel his flowers. He's always seemed to figure it out at the quarterback spot. Now, here's the conversation I want to get into, and I've seen the Tennessee fans put this in the comment section. I've seen it on the message boards a few times. Are we fully prepared to just give Joey Aguilar the quarterback one tag rolling into fall camp? You know, Josh Heupel has been pretty vocal that this is going to be a competition rolling into the fall. And I'll say this still, if I was a betting man, of which I am, I'd probably put my money on Joey Aguilar to take the first snap as the quarterback one for Tennessee in 2025. But to count out Jake, who I think is an absolute dude coming out of high school, and there's a lot of reason to believe that he could be ready to be the dude in 2025, I think it's kind of foolish. I want to dive into Jake. I want to dive into Joey, talk about what these quarterbacks bring. We'll talk about George McIntyre too. I think there's probably a year or two. And I think that was the plan for Tennessee. I think you took George McIntyre knowing there was probably going to be a year or two of development before he was ready. I want to get into the conversation of who's actually going to be the quarterback one rolling into 2025, because I think a lot of people are just blindly assuming it's Joey. I don't think that's the case. And I know the Tennessee fans kind of agree. Please, Tennessee fans, let it fly in the comment section. Don't be afraid to call your shot. I think there's a lot of Tennessee fans that are quietly kind of rocking with Jake going into 2025. Let it fly. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. This program has been a blast to talk about over the last couple of years, and especially the last couple of months. We can't thank you guys enough for the support. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Dill, I'm going to give you the T-box here because I know you are kind of the poster boy for Jake rolling into 2025. How are we feeling about this quarterback battle rolling into fall camp here?
And I think you said it, like right when Tennessee went to the portal for a quarterback in the spring, which they had to do no matter what, even if he wasn't going to be your starter,
Yep.
you couldn't have gone into the year with Merck
Yes.
and McIntyre as your only two quarterbacks. It's just too inexperienced, too thin. So you know they were going to the portal in the spring, but I mean, you look at what they were able to do and like who was going to be an option essentially is probably more what it came down to.
Yep.
It was always going to be really hard, I thought, to get a guy who was just head and shoulders a better option than Jake Merklinger, because that's like Jake Merklinger was recruited to be Tennessee's quarterback. Like he was not some throw-in afterthought recruit that's like, oh, well, we have an extra roster spot, we'll throw it to like some very low upside quarterback. Like Jake Merklinger is supposed to be the guy, and okay, maybe press him into duty a year earlier. He still was recruited to be the guy at Tennessee.
Yes, I think people kind of assume that way. You know, when you follow a guy like Nico, you're inherently not going to get a ton of attention. And here's the thing that I think is really important to mention with Jake. Nico, as a quarterback coming out of high school, was just this beauty of a prospect, right? He was a guy that dominated the 7-on-7 scene. When you watch him throw on air, it's like this kid in his physical ability is a little bit different. And we're all still saying that about Nico. Here's the thing about Nico, though. Him as an actual football player with shoulder pads and a helmet on never really got to that ceiling yet. In high school, he was a guy that he didn't play much his sophomore year. Played his junior year, then transferred to another school his senior year. He was a guy that I think people assumed was more ready to play early than he actually was. Now, although Nico has the higher upside as a football player, as a thrower of the football, as a quarterback, they'll look at Jake and say he was a guy that I would tag to be a little bit more day one / play early playing time ready. He was a guy who's a 4-year starter at the high school rank. Still, he's thrown 895 live pass attempts in high school. So a guy that played a lot of football coming out of the high school ranks. Last 2 seasons in high school, 70 touchdowns to 4 interceptions with a 65% plus completion percentage. This was a guy that you turn on the junior year, senior year stuff and say, okay, the upside, I don't know if he'll ever be a top 10 NFL draft pick, but I think he's ready to be a very solid quarterback early at the collegiate ranks. I guess that's all that to say. I think Jake is probably a little bit more ready than people would probably assume. Now, I want to touch on Joey Aguilar too, because I know you've spent a lot of time watching him, as have I, and as have, I'm sure, many Tennessee fans. If you were to make the elevator pitch in terms of Joey Aguilar being the guy and getting good quarterback play from him, what would that elevator pitch sound like?
I mean, it'd have to be turn on the 2023 film. That's where it comes. That's the hard
He was awesome.
evaluation part for Joey Aguilar.
Yeah.
He was really good in 23 and not particularly great in 24. Turned the ball over too much, wasn't as efficient. Like everything came down for him in that year. And again, App State was a worse team for sure. That's clearly what kind of started that.
Yep.
But that is the thing that Tennessee is going to have to wrestle with, especially because I think there's a bit of uncertainty about what Tennessee is going to be around the quarterback right now. When you look at like replacing a lot of offensive linemen, you got to replace your number one back. You got to replace a good chunk of the wideout core, which was disappointing last year. So that's maybe in a sense a good thing. Like you're excited about what Mike Matthews and what Braylon Staley can be, but they still got to make that happen. And in Joey Aguilar's issue when he didn't have a really kind of rocking team around him and to be productive was a problem.
I think you can make that argument for Josh Heupel as a whole. Like when has Josh Heupel had his best offenses? It's not necessarily with the 5-star quarterback Nico or the absolute beauty of a prospect in Joe Milton. Like when he's had his best offenses, yeah, he's had good quarterback play. Any offense that wants to be good, you need serviceable quarterback play, good quarterback play. The best kind of Josh Heupel offense is when we got legit dudes around the quarterback position. Does Tennessee have that for Joey Aguilar or a guy like Jake is probably the question. Now, I want to touch on Jake too, though, or excuse me, Joey as well. The one thing that excites me the most about Joey probably just has to do with what's between the ears, like how this kid is wired. He's a gamer. And it might not look as clean without pads and a helmet on like Nico does. Nico looks freaking awesome throwing in summer workouts. When you strap on the helmet and when it's time to go make plays on the football field, Joey Aguilar, I think here's the question I would ask you and I would ask Tennessee fans and I would ask Josh Heupel. What quarterback would you rather have under center going on the road to Ohio State in a hostile environment in the middle of December? From a pure leadership standpoint, I think the answer is Joey, and I think the answer is obviously Joey. And so there are some reasons to believe Joey can be a dude. And I'll say this, the Josh Heupel offense has been really good at ironing out turnovers. It makes it easy for you. You're not having to go through as much progressions and as much reads. Like Josh Heupel is going to dial up the throws. We just need you to make them. Joey has the arm. Go back to what you said. Even the App State film in 2024, when the turnovers were a little bit more prevalent, there's also clearly high-level throws on that film too. But Dill, I think you're dead on. I think it has a little bit more to do with what's around the quarterback. You know, I think we're going to spend a lot of time talking about who's going to be the quarterback. Is the quarterback going to be good enough? When the more important conversation is what's around the Tennessee quarterback. Specifically for me, do you think Tennessee will be able to run the football as effectively as they were able to do in 2024?
And that's, to me, the part that gets overblown. I have a much bigger question about what this wide receiver core looks like. I look at what Tennessee's done over Heupel's tenure. That's been a team that's always been physical. They've always been able to run the ball. Yeah. I know they're replacing a lot of guys in the offensive line, but they've recruited that position well.
So
well. Trent Warren was top 100 tackle. Max Anderson, bona fide 4-star. Jesse Perry, not maybe the prettiest recruit in the history of the world. Go back and watch what he was doing last year as a true freshman, a guy who probably physically needed another year anyway, looked really good in my opinion. So they're brought in some really solid portal guys as well. So I look, the running game is not going to be as big of an issue, especially because I think Peyton Lewis is like really good player.
Yeah, I think that's to me, my bigger concern is the offensive line. And maybe it shouldn't be because you're right. They've developed the position well. They've recruited the position well.
Well, because if I asked you this about Texas, you'd be like, oh, yeah, Texas is going to be fine up front. They're always fine up front. Sark's put in a good culture of offensive line play. Tennessee kind of has too. Now, again, you certainly hope they iron out the pass protection issues because they were pretty bad there last year. But that's been a unit that's just when it's about physicality and running the football and being tough. And Josh Heupel, again, being a very, very good dialer up of the run scheme itself. They've always been able to do it. They've always been able to play physical. And they certainly have the talent in this group to be a pretty effective unit.
Yeah, I think when people talk about the Tennessee run game in 2025, like so much goes to, oh, you lose Dylan Sampson. And look, this ain't a shot at Dylan Sampson. He's one of the best running backs in college football last year. I think the Tennessee fans who follow this program closely, it's like it has to do more with the offensive line. Can we road grade as much as we did last year? Because whether it's Peyton Lewis, whether it's Deshaun Bishop, whether it's Star Thomas, who I don't think was a bad addition in the portal, I think you have the dudes in the running back room. It starts with, can you impose your will the way you were able to in the 2025 year? Pass protection is a great point. That's got to get better. Dude, and here's the problem with Tennessee's pass protection last year. When you went up against the best teams in the country, that's when it got shaky. And that's really what separates good offensive lines from great offensive lines. Like, hey, Tennessee can block up some of the worst teams in the SEC or some of the mid teams in the SEC. That should be the expectation. If you want to be a legitimate national championship team, you have to have an offensive line that can block up teams like Georgia, teams like Texas in the playoffs, or Ohio State. Can they take that step as a pass protection unit is probably going to be a big storyline for
David Sanders, you look like he is a bit more of a prototypical tackle. Tennessee is me. You can probably argue a little bit has had some issues with having a little bit like lack of athleticism at the tackle spot, as much as guys like who they've had in the past have been able to be physical. They've not always been the fleetest of foot and particularly athletic at that spot. David Sanders like 180 on that. And David Sanders is the complete package. That's not to say he can't go play physical and do dirty work as well.
That's probably your bigger concern for him, though, is like how physically imposing are you going to be as a freshman? Because I'm with you. In pass protection, this kid's an elite athlete with an elite length, great functional strength. It's funny. We're like, hey, is Tennessee's offensive line good enough? When you look at it, it's like all 4- and 5-star guys do 5-star tackles. Can David Sanders be? And again, it's the SEC. It's a little bit different from like Jordan Seaton at Colorado. Jordan Seaton, maybe a couple of games to get his feet wet, emerged as a great tackle for Colorado last year. Can you get that from David Sanders, who I'll just say it, I thought was the best tackle in the class last year? I know he finished, I think, at number 3, but I don't think there was a tackle better. Is he ready to be that guy immediately in the 20?
And then you probably got to get that step from Lance Hurd. Lance Hurd was a guy who last year in pass protection probably wasn't good enough. Again, certainly a tradesy enough guy, a good enough athlete. I think he's just got to, he's got to kind of round into form and play like the first round tackle that he has the talent to be. So it's like there's certainly, I think, more optimism on the offensive line than a lot of people, again, just look at when you lose 4 guys, you're going to be horrible. It's like, Tennessee's put in a pretty good system of offensive line play. They've been really effective at reloading that group. They brought in a couple of high floor transfer portal guys who, again, I'm not convinced either of those guys are necessarily going to start. Like a Max Anderson's going to be pushing it. Jesse Perry, I think those guys are going to be pushing for spots.
I agree.
But those guys do raise your floor, and you have probably the most talented group of tackles you've had in Josh Heupel's history.
Yeah, and it's you said it best. It's deep. The returning production metric is the most like when I say like lazy stat that people use when they just blindly look at it and say, "Oh, you lose these guys, you ain't going to be good," or you return all these guys and you're going to be sick. Like that's what we were saying with Virginia Tech last year. Like, they returned the whole football team. Well, they weren't freaking they weren't any good in 2023. Like, what makes you think they're going to be they're returning all their guys who are average? And people look at Texas or LSU or Tennessee and say, you lose all these guys, you ain't going to be good. When you got to add a little bit of color context and say you made some nice additions in the portal, recruited the position really well, have developed the position really well, and I'll be the first one. Like, Tennessee fans, like, what the hell are you talking about, buddy? You've been questioning Tennessee all offseason. Like that. There's probably some truth to every time we dive into Tennessee and we talk about Tennessee, I start buying stock into it when we started. All right, last thing we got to talk about these wide receivers, and this is the definition of like, all right, new faces could be good. It wasn't close to being what it needed to be in 2025 or 2024. That is. Who do you think leads this team in passing or receiving yards in the 2020? Who do you think is going to be the guy? That's probably the biggest issue with Tennessee last year is they had a bunch of solid average. Can they have that guy in 2025?
My hunch is honestly Staley, and I'm debating him and Brazel. Like
Me too.
Brazel,
Those are my
again,
two.
I felt like you were excited about from the spring game, and he just didn't make it happen at Tennessee last year.
Yeah.
I'd probably lean Braylon Staley. I thought like some of the flashes you saw from him as a
Yeah.
freshman, he'd probably be my guy.
And it's crazy because those are my first two names too. And then it's like you're sleeping on the year 2 5-star freshman of Mikey Matthews. And I'll say this, the tight end position excites me too. It actually excites me a lot. And that's always been a position where I feel like this could unlock the offense with all these wide splits and how much that middle of the field is like it has how much space there is in the middle of the field. Like a good tight end can unlock this offense.
And I'm not even like I think Miles Kitselman's a really good player. Like you go to that Georgia game, like
Agreed.
the plays he was making for them, like huge plays. They need Ethan Davis to come alive and start being like a guy because you look at that athletic profile and what he can be in that offense, being like a real problem, like through the intermediate middle portion of the field. I think it's again a team that I imagine could play with two tight ends a lot because they want to be physical. Kitselman especially is a really good run blocker. But Ethan Davis, I'd love to see him get going for this Tennessee
I
team.
100% agree. His upside as a pass catcher is astronomically high. Can he make it happen? All right. I mean, and then we could. I think we'll skip the conversation on the defense because it's a position it's a unit that that's the thing. Every summer we talk about Josh Heupel and the success they've had recruiting the line of scrimmage on defense. It's played out like that. Like you spent a lot of resource and a lot of effort recruiting the guys that look like Georgia and Alabama on the defensive line. Well, you got that result in 2024. You lose some guys. Can you have a similar result in 2025? The defense should be solid.
If you
Then
can
the
figure
question
out
is,
the safety spot, you'll be fine, I think, on defense.
And for me, it's also the depth of the defensive line with how fast Tennessee wants to play. Do you have? Because I think that was a huge asset to Tennessee was how much they could rotate those big bodies last year with the pace that offense plays. But they recruited that position really well. All right, we'll close it out there. Longer conversation than I expected. You get me talking Tennessee, and you start to buy in a little bit. All right, appreciate you guys rocking with it. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. We'll talk to y'all later.